The immortals couldn't understand death until humans taught them. How to Let Go Part 1. The research vessel Horizon Dawn drifted through space like a wounded bird. Its navigation system had failed 3 days ago, and now the ship floated in a region of space that no human had ever seen before. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge and stared at the strange structure ahead. It was a ring, but not like any ring she had ever seen. This ring was the size of a planet. It wrapped around a distant star and glowed with soft blue light. Cities covered its surface like tiny jewels. "What is that thing?" she whispered. Before anyone could answer, the ship shook. Something had grabbed them. A beam of light pulled the Horizon Dawn toward the massive ring dot in the medical bay. Daniel Porter woke from cryosleep. He was 67 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much pain and too much beauty. For 40 years, he had worked as a hospice counselor, sitting beside dying people and helping them find peace in their final hours. Catherine Ross woke beside him. She was 34, a doctor who specialized in caring for the dying. She had joined this colony mission because she wanted a fresh start, a new world where she could build something that would last. "Where are we?" Catherine asked. Daniel looked through the small window. The ring world filled his vision. "I have no idea, but I think we are about to find out." The Allery came aboard 1 hour later. They were tall beings, nearly 8 feet in height, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver. Their eyes were large and dark, filled with an intelligence that seemed both ancient and empty at the same time. The leader of the boarding party called himself Velaythan. He studied the humans with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. "You are biological," he said. His voice was soft like wind through leaves. "You age. You decay. You die." "Yes," Captain Hayes replied. "That is what living things do." Velaythan tilted his head. "We do not understand. Why would any species choose to remain mortal? Surely you have the technology to stop this process." "We don't," Catherine said. "And even if we did, I'm not sure we would use it." This answer seemed to disturb Velaythan deeply. He conferred with his companions in a language that sounded like music, then turned back to the humans. "You will come with us. The Council of Perpetuity wishes to study you." The humans had no choice. The Allery were not threatening them, but their ship was disabled and their people were helpless. Daniel and Catherine volunteered to go first, to represent humanity to these strange immortal beings. The endless expanse was beautiful and terrible. Cities stretched across the ring's inner surface, each one a masterpiece of architecture. But the streets were empty. The buildings stood silent. Daniel saw no children playing, no vendors selling goods, no artists painting pictures. The Allery drifted through their world like ghosts, their faces blank, their movements slow. "How old is this place?" Daniel asked. Salindra answered. She was their guide, a young Allery by her people's standards. She had lived only 400,000 years. "We do not know," she admitted. "The endless expanse was here before our records began. Perhaps 12 million years. Perhaps longer. And your people have lived here all that time?" "We have existed here," Salindra corrected. "Living is perhaps not the right word." She led them to the Archive of Memory, a building that stretched toward the artificial sky. Inside, millions of journals lined the walls, each one containing the recorded thoughts of an Allori life. "We keep these records so we do not forget ourselves," Salindra explained. "When you live forever, memory becomes unreliable. We write things down so we know who we were." Daniel pulled a journal from a shelf near the entrance. It was old, perhaps 10 million years old, but perfectly preserved. He opened it and read the first entry. "Today, I fell in love. Her name is Carland, and when she smiles, I feel like the universe is singing. I want to create something beautiful for her, a poem or a painting or a song. I want to capture this feeling and hold it forever. He put the journal back and pulled another from a shelf near the back. This one was recent, written only 1,000 years ago. Another day. Nothing changes. Nothing will ever change. That was the entire entry. Daniel flipped through the pages. The same sentence repeated over and over, filling every page. What happened to your people? He asked quietly. Cylindra's silver face showed something that might have been sadness. We achieved perfection. We conquered death. We eliminated suffering. And then we discovered that without death, without suffering, nothing has meaning. We stopped creating. We stopped dreaming. We stopped caring. She led them deeper into the archive, to a section that made Daniel's heart ache. Rows of stasis pods stretched into the distance, each one containing a sleeping Elori. The fading, Cylindra said. When existence becomes unbearable, our people choose to sleep. 900 million of us now rest in chambers like this one across the endless expanse. They are not dead, but they are not alive either. They simply stopped. Catherine stared at the pods with horror. This is not peace. This is surrender. Yes, Cylindra agreed. But what choice do we have? We cannot die. We can only endure. That night, Daniel sat in his quarters and thought about everything he had seen. These beings had everything humans dreamed of. They had conquered aging, disease, and death itself. They had built wonders that would last until the stars burned out, and they were the most miserable creatures he had ever encountered. Cylindra came to him before he slept. She stood in his doorway, her dark eyes searching his face. I have a question, she said. Why do you create things when you know you will die before seeing their full impact? Why do you love when you know that love will end in loss? Why do you try when you know that trying is ultimately pointless? Daniel smiled sadly. He thought of his wife Margaret, who had died 6 years ago. He thought of holding her hand as she took her last breath. He thought of the grief that had nearly killed him and the purpose he had found in helping others face their own endings. Because we die, he said. That is exactly why. Cylindra did not understand, but she wanted to. And that wanting, Daniel realized, was the first sign of hope he had seen in this entire dead civilization. The immortals couldn't understand death until humans taught them how to let go part. 2 days passed on the endless expanse, though Daniel found it hard to measure time in a place where time meant nothing. The Allery had no clocks, no calendars, no sense of urgency. Why would they? They had forever. Catherine spent her days in the medical halls, examining Elori volunteers who were curious about their mortal visitors. She ran every test she knew, and the results amazed her. Their bodies are perfect, she told Daniel one evening. No disease, no cellular decay, no genetic errors. They have engineered themselves into biological immortality. That sounds wonderful, Daniel said. It sounds like a prison, Catherine replied. They cannot change. They cannot grow. They cannot even get sick. They are frozen in perfection, and perfection is boring. Daniel understood. He had spent his life with dying people, and he had learned that death was not the enemy. Fear of death was the enemy. Running from death was the enemy. But death itself was simply a door, and walking through it gave life its shape. Cylindra continued to guide them through the endless expanse. She showed them the empty museums where art had not been created in 3 million years. She showed them the silent laboratories where scientists had abandoned their research because there was nothing left to discover. She showed them the nurseries where no children had been born in longer than anyone could remember. Why do you not have children? Daniel asked. What would be the point? Cylindra answered. We do not die, so we do not need to replace ourselves. And children require hope for the future. We have no hope. We have only endless present. One morning, Cylindra took them to meet someone she called Corindel. He sat in a small room in the archive, staring at a blank wall. His silver skin had faded to gray, and his eyes were empty. Corindel has lived for 6 million years, Cylindra explained. But he does not remember any of it. What do you mean? Catherine asked. He has erased himself. When existence becomes too painful, some of us choose to wipe our memories and start fresh. Corindel has done this over 300 times. He no longer knows his original name, his original family, his original purpose. He exists, but he is not really here. Daniel knelt beside Corindel. The ancient being looked at him without recognition, without interest, without anything at all. Can you hear me? Daniel asked gently. I hear you, Corindel replied. But hearing means nothing. Speaking means nothing. Nothing means anything. Daniel had seen this before. Not in immortal aliens, but in humans who had given up on life. People who had lost so much that they had disconnected from existence itself. The treatment was the same, whether the patient had lived 60 years or 6 million. Tell me one thing you remember, Daniel said. Just one thing. Anything at all. Corindel was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly he spoke. I remember a color. Blue. I think I loved someone whose eyes were blue. But I cannot remember her name or her face or why she mattered. I only remember blue. Daniel nodded. That is enough. That is a beginning. Later that day, Velathan summoned them to his chambers. The elder Allery looked troubled, his perfect face showing cracks of emotion that Daniel suspected he had not felt in millions of years. You disturb us, Velathan said. Your presence here has caused more discussion among my people than anything in the last 1,000,000 years. Some see you as a curiosity. Others see you as a threat. We are neither, Daniel replied. We are simply different. Your difference is the threat, Velathan said. You carry death with you. Every moment you move closer to your end. And somehow, this does not terrify you. This makes you strange. This makes you dangerous. Death does terrify me, Daniel admitted. I think about it every day. But terror is not the same as despair. I am afraid of dying, but I am not afraid of having lived. Velathan leaned forward. Explain this. How can you accept an ending? Daniel thought of Margaret again. He thought of her laugh, her kindness, the way she always knew when he needed comfort. He thought of the cancer that took her, the months of pain, the final night when she had slipped away in his arms. My wife died 6 years ago, he said. Her name was Margaret. We were married for 38 years. When she died, I wanted to die too. The grief was so heavy that I could not breathe. I could not eat. I could not sleep. I wanted to erase myself, just like Corindel. Cylindra watched him with wide eyes. Velathan sat motionless. But I did not erase myself, Daniel continued. I sat with the pain. I let it wash over me. I cried until I had no tears left. And then, slowly, I began to heal. Not because I forgot Margaret, but because I remembered her. I remembered the good times and the bad times. I remembered our fights and our reconciliations. I remembered the life we built together. And this helped? Velathan asked. It saved me, because I realized that grief is not the enemy. Grief is love with nowhere to go. When we lose someone, we do not stop loving them. We simply have to find new ways to carry that love. And carrying it, even when it hurts, is better than erasing it. Cylindra spoke quietly. I have lost people too. Friends who chose the fading. Lovers who erased themselves. I never mourned them. I simply moved on because I had forever to forget. Then you never let them go, Daniel said. You just buried them. And buried things do not disappear. They rot. They poison everything around them. Tears appeared in Cylindra's dark eyes. Daniel had never seen an Allery cry before. Perhaps they had forgotten how. "Can you teach me?" she asked. "Can you teach me to grieve?" Daniel took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, but underneath, he felt something warm struggling to break free. "Yes," he said, "but it will hurt. It will hurt more than anything you have ever felt. Are you ready for that?" Cylindra nodded. "I have felt nothing for 400,000 years. I am ready to feel something, even if that something is pain." And so Daniel began the first grief counseling session in Allery history. He sat with Cylindra in a quiet garden, and he asked her to remember. Remember the friends she had lost. Remember the lovers who had faded. Remember everything she had buried in the endless years. At first, nothing happened. Cylindra spoke names and dates like she was reading a list. But Daniel pushed deeper, asking about moments, feelings, small details that carried emotional weight. And then, suddenly, the dam broke. Cylindra collapsed into sobs. 400,000 years of suppressed loss poured out of her in waves. She cried for hours, naming people Daniel had never met, describing moments he could barely understand. She grieved for a civilization that had forgotten how to feel. When it was over, she lay exhausted in the garden, her silver skin streaked with tears. "Is this what death feels like?" she whispered. "No," Daniel said gently. "This is what life feels like. You have just begun to live." The immortals couldn't understand death until humans taught them how the let go part, three-word, spread through the endless expanse like fire through dry grass. The mortal visitors had made Cylindra cry. The mortal visitors had taught her something new. The mortal visitors had given her a feeling she had not felt in 400,000 years. Within days, other Allery came seeking Daniel and Catherine. They came shyly at first, like children approaching a strange animal. Then they came in crowds, filling the gardens outside the archive of memory. "Teach us," they begged. "Teach us to feel." Daniel did what he could. He held sessions every day, guiding small groups of immortals through the process of remembering and releasing. Catherine helped those whose grief manifested as physical symptoms, holding hands and offering comfort while ancient beings wept for the first time in millions of years. But not everyone welcomed these changes. Elder Dandros was the oldest member of the Council of Perpetuity. He had lived for 9 million years, and he had not felt an emotion in 8 of them. When he heard about the disturbances the humans were causing, he demanded an audience with the council. "These mortals are poison," he declared. His voice echoed through the great chamber where the 12 elders sat in their crystal thrones. "They bring ideas that threaten everything we have built. Death worship, grief addiction, the celebration of endings. These concepts are diseases, and we must quarantine them before they spread further." Velathan raised his hand. "I have spoken with the humans. They do not worship death. They simply accept it. Acceptance is the first step toward surrender," Dandros replied. "Today they accept death. Tomorrow they will seek it. And what happens when our people start choosing to die? What happens when we lose the immortality we worked so hard to achieve?" "Perhaps that would not be entirely bad," another elder said quietly. Her name was Lindarith, and she had spent the last century in silent contemplation. "I have watched our civilization crumble for 3 million years. We do not create. We do not dream. We do not love. We simply exist. Is that really better than death?" Dandros turned on her with cold fury. "You speak like someone already infected. Guards, I want the humans brought before the council immediately." Daniel and Catherine stood in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by immortal beings who looked at them with a mixture of hope and fear. Daniel had faced difficult audiences before, Families who blamed him for not saving their loved ones. Patients who raged against the dying of the light. But he had never faced anything like this. "You have caused disruption," Thandros said. "Your ideas have spread through our population like a virus. Alari, who have not felt emotions in millions of years, are suddenly weeping in public. Our orderly society is fracturing. Is order more important than meaning?" Daniel asked. Thandros leaned forward. "Order is everything. Order is how we have survived for 12 million years. Without order, we would have destroyed ourselves long ago." "With respect," Catherine said, "you have already destroyed yourselves. 900 million of your people sleep in the fading chambers. Countless others have erased their minds. Your artists do not create. Your scientists do not discover. Your lovers do not love. You have perfect order, and it has killed everything worth ordering." The chamber fell silent. Several elders shifted uncomfortably on their thrones. Even Thandros seemed momentarily shaken. Daniel stepped forward. "I am not here to destroy your civilization. I am here because my ship broke down and your people brought me here. But since I am here, let me tell you what I see." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I see a species that conquered every challenge except the most important one. You defeated disease, aging, and death. You built wonders that will last until the stars burn out. But you forgot that life is not about lasting. Life is about meaning. And meaning comes from limits." "Explain," Velethan said. "A story without an ending is not a story. It is just noise. A song that never finishes is not a song. It is just sound. A life without death is not a life. It is just existence. You remove the ending from your story, and now your story means nothing." Thandros stood abruptly. "I have heard enough. These beings are dangerous. I propose we return them to their ship and send them away. Let them take their death philosophy to some other corner of the galaxy." "And the colonists?" Linderith asked. "There are 800 humans still in cryosleep aboard their vessel." Thandros waved his hand dismissively. "Send them all. Or jettison them into space. I do not care. I simply want them gone. You would kill innocent people to protect yourselves from an idea?" Catherine asked. "I would do what is necessary to preserve our way of life." Daniel shook his head. "Your way of life is already dead. You killed it 3 million years ago when you stopped feeling. We cannot threaten something that no longer exists." Velethan stood. In 12 million years, he had never directly opposed another elder. But something had changed in him since meeting the humans. A spark had ignited in his ancient heart. A warmth he had forgotten was possible. "I call for a vote," he said. "Not on whether to expel the humans, but on whether to listen to them. Let them address the council properly. Let them explain their philosophy of death and meaning. And then let us decide if there is wisdom in their words." The vote was close. 6 elders voted to hear the humans. 5 voted to expel them. Thandros abstained, his face a mask of cold anger. "Very well," he said. "Speak your piece, mortal. But know that I will be listening for every flaw in your argument. And when I find them, I will use them to destroy everything you have built here." Daniel nodded. He had faced death many times, in the eyes of his patients, in the mirror when Margaret died, in the quiet moments when his own mortality pressed against his chest. He was not afraid of Thandros. "Let me tell you about a human concept," he said. "We call it legacy." He spoke for hours. He told them about artists who created works they would never see completed. Scientists who started research that would not bear fruit for generations. Parents who raised children knowing those children would outlive them. He told them about sacrifice, about giving up something precious so that others might benefit. "Humans do not live for themselves," he said. "We live for those who came before and those who will come after. Our lives are links in a chain that stretches back to the beginning of our species and forward to its end. We matter because we are part of something larger than ourselves." When he finished, the chamber was silent. Several elders had tears in their eyes, emotions they had not felt in ages stirring within them. Even Thandros seemed affected, though he hid it well. "Pretty words," he said finally. "But words do not change reality. You will still die. Your legacy will fade. Eventually, even the memory of humanity will disappear. Nothing you do will last forever." Daniel smiled. "I know. That is what makes it precious." The Immortals couldn't understand death until humans taught them how to let go. Part 4. 3 months passed on the endless expanse. Daniel and Catherine had become something between teachers and healers, guides for a civilization that was slowly learning to feel again. The changes were small at first. An Allery would paint a picture for the first time in 1,000 years. Another would write a poem. Two beings who had known each other for millions of years would suddenly look at each other differently, seeing not just a familiar face but a soul worth loving. Salindra became their most devoted student. She attended every session Daniel held, helped Catherine with the medical examinations, and spent her evenings reading human literature. She was particularly moved by human poetry, by the way mortals could capture the beauty of fleeting moments in a few short lines. "How do you do this?" she asked Daniel one evening. "How do you find meaning in something so brief?" "The brevity is the meaning," Daniel replied. "A flower that bloomed forever would not be beautiful. It is beautiful because it fades. A sunset that lasted all night would not be moving. It moves us because it ends. Every precious thing in the universe is precious because it will not last." But not all Allery welcomed the changes. Thandros had been quiet since the council meeting, watching and waiting for an opportunity to strike. That opportunity came on the 93rd day. Salindra burst into Daniel's quarters just before dawn. Her silver face was pale with fear. "Thandros has ordered the destruction of your ship," she said. "He is sending a team to jettison the colonists into space. He says he is protecting our civilization from contamination." Daniel felt ice in his chest. 847 humans floated in cryosleep aboard the Horizon Dawn. Families, children, people who had left everything behind to start new lives on a distant world. And now they would die because one ancient being feared change. "Can you stop him?" Daniel asked. "I have no authority. Thandros has convinced 5 elders to support him. They are acting now, before Velethan can organize opposition." Catherine appeared in the doorway. She had heard everything. "We need to get to that ship." They ran through the empty streets of the endless expanse, Salindra guiding them toward the docking platforms where the Horizon Dawn was moored. But they were too late. A squad of Allery security officers blocked their path, their faces expressionless. "You are confined to the archive," the squad leader said. "By order of Elder Thandros." Daniel stepped forward. "Those are innocent people on that ship. They have done nothing wrong. They carry the infection of mortality. They must be removed." Catherine grabbed Daniel's arm. "There has to be another way. Can we appeal to Velethan?" Salindra shook her head. "There is no time. Thandros is moving quickly because he knows the council is divided. If we want to save your people, we need to act now." Daniel looked at the security officers. They were immortal beings, millions of years old, following orders because they had followed orders for so long they had forgotten any other way to exist. He saw no malice in their eyes, only emptiness. "Let me ask you something," he said to the squad leader. "When was the last time you made a choice? Not followed an order, but actually decided something for yourself?" The officer hesitated. "I do not understand the question." "I think you do. You have lived for how long? 1,000,000 years? 2,000,000? And in all that time, have you ever done something simply because you wanted to do it? Have you ever felt anything strongly enough to act on it? The officer's face flickered with something that might have been confusion. Feelings are disruptive. We follow orders because orders maintain stability. Stability is not the same as life, Daniel said. Stability is what you have instead of life. And if you let those colonists die, you will never know what you could have become. Before the officer could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Stand down. Velathan emerged from the shadows, followed by Lindareth and 3 other elders. Behind them came dozens of Alari, beings who had attended Daniel's sessions, who had learned to feel again, who were now standing up for the first time in millions of years. Thandros does not speak for the council, Velathan said. I have called an emergency session. Until the council rules, no action will be taken against the humans or their vessel. The security officers wavered. They had orders, but they also had something older, something they had almost forgotten. Respect for the council. Respect for proper procedure. Perhaps even the beginning of respect for themselves. Stand down, the squad leader finally said to his team. We will await the council's decision. Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. But the crisis was not over. Thandros still had support, and the fate of 847 humans hung in the balance. Catherine turned to Velathan. What happens now? Now we go to the council chamber, and you make the case for your people's survival. The chamber was crowded when they arrived. Word had spread through the endless expanse, and thousands of Alori had gathered to witness the debate. Thandros stood on one side, his face hard with determination. Velathan stood on the other, his ancient eyes filled with something that looked almost like hope. This is unprecedented, Thandros declared. Never in our history have outsiders been allowed to address the council during a matter of survival. I object to their presence. Your objection is noted, Lindareth replied. But the council has voted. The humans will speak. Daniel stepped forward. He was tired, he was scared, and he was very aware that he was a 67-year-old man standing before beings who existed before his species learned to walk upright. But he had spent his life helping people face their endings, and he was not about to stop now. I am not going to beg for our lives, he said. I am not going to promise that we will change or that we will hide our mortality from your people. I am going to tell you the truth. He paused, looking around the chamber at the thousands of faces watching him. We are going to die. All 847 of us. In a century, 2 at most, every human on that ship will be gone. Our lives are brief flames that flicker and fade. And that is exactly why you should let us stay. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Thandros smiled coldly, believing Daniel had made his case for him. But Daniel was not finished. You are afraid of death because you have never seen it. You are afraid of endings because you have never experienced one. But death is not a disease. It is not a failure. It is a teacher. And every human who lives and dies among you will teach you something that all your millions of years of existence never could. He took a deep breath. Let us stay. Let us live with you, love with you, create with you. Let us grow old while you watch, and let us die when our time comes. And when we die, remember us. Grieve for us. Let our endings give your existence the meaning it has been missing. The chamber fell silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, feel the weight of every eye upon him. Finally, Selindra stepped forward. Her silver face was calm, her dark eyes clear. I have a request for the council, she said. I wish to undergo the mortality procedure. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Thandros stared at her in disbelief. What did you say? I want to become mortal. I want to age. I want to die. I want to feel everything the humans feel, including the ending. That is impossible, Thandros sputtered. No Alari has ever chosen death. Then I will be the first. Selindra looked at Daniel. and her eyes were filled with something that had not existed on the endless expanse in 3 million years: hope. He showed me that endings are not the enemy. Avoiding endings is the enemy. I have existed for 400,000 years without truly living. I am ready to live, even if it means I must eventually die. One by one, other Allery stepped forward. 5, 10, 50, 100. All of them requesting mortality. All of them willing to trade forever for meaning. Thandros watched his opposition crumble around him, and for the first time in 9 million years, he felt something he had forgotten existed: fear. The Immortals couldn't understand death until humans taught them how to let go. Part 5. The vote was not even close. By a margin of 9-3, the council ruled that the humans would remain on the endless expanse. The colonists would be awakened, given homes, and allowed to live among the Allori as teachers and friends. Thandros left the chamber without speaking. He would not be seen in public again for many years, retreating to his private quarters to contemplate what had happened. But Daniel knew that this was not defeat for the ancient elder. It was the beginning of change. Thandros had felt fear, perhaps for the first time in millions of years. Fear was not pleasant, but it was alive. It was a start. The months that followed were filled with wonder. 847 humans woke from cryosleep to find themselves in a world beyond their wildest dreams. Children ran through gardens that had been silent for ages. Families gathered in homes that had stood empty for millions of years. Artists painted, musicians played, and writers filled the archive of memory with new stories. And the Allery watched and learned, and slowly began to heal. Cylindra underwent the mortality procedure on a bright morning 6 months after the council vote. The process was complicated because the technology had been lost for ages. Catherine worked with Allery physicians to reverse engineer a method that would gradually remove the immortality from Cylindra's cells, allowing her to age naturally over the course of several decades. When it was done, Cylindra looked the same, but something in her eyes had changed. A clock had started ticking inside her, counting down the days and hours and minutes of her new finite life. "How do you feel?" Daniel asked her. Cylindra smiled. Terrified, excited, grateful, alive. She laughed, a sound like silver bells. "I feel so many things at once. Is this what it is like for you? All the time?" "Yes," Daniel said. "It is exhausting, and it is beautiful." In the year that followed, over 10,000 Allery chose mortality. Some were young by their species standards, seeking the meaning they had never found in endless existence. Others were ancient, beings who had lived for millions of years and wanted finally to rest. The fading chambers began to empty as those in stasis were awakened and offered a choice. Many chose to continue sleeping, but many others chose to wake, to live, and eventually to die. The culture of the endless expanse transformed. Museums filled with new art. Laboratories hummed with fresh research. Children were born for the first time in ages. Small silver beings who would grow up knowing both the weight of mortality and the gift of meaning. Daniel continued his work as a counselor, though his role had changed. He no longer only helped people face death. He helped them embrace life, teaching Allori how to find purpose in each fleeting day. Catherine established the first mortal medical practice on the endless expanse, training Allery physicians in the art of caring for beings who could actually get sick, who could actually age, who could actually die. It was challenging work, relearning skills that have been forgotten for millions of years. But the Allery were eager students. On the first anniversary of the council vote, Velethin invited Daniel to walk with him through the gardens where so much had begun. The ancient elder moved slowly, his silver form showing the first signs of the mortality he had chosen. "I want to thank you," Velethin said. "You have given us something precious. I did not give you anything, Daniel replied. I simply reminded you of what you had forgotten. Velathan nodded. Perhaps that is the greatest gift of all. To remind someone of the truth they already carry inside them. They walked in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the curve of the ring world. Colors painted the artificial sky. Reds and oranges and purples, blending together in a display that had happened every day for 12 million years, but somehow seemed new and wonderful now. Are you afraid? Daniel asked. Of dying? Velathan considered the question. Yes, but I am more afraid of existing without meaning. I watched our civilization die from the inside for 3 million years. I saw our greatest minds become hollow. I saw our deepest loves fade into indifference. If death is the price of avoiding that fate, I will pay it gladly. 2 years passed. Daniel grew older, his hair turning white, his steps becoming slower. But his work continued, and his purpose never wavered. Then came the day he had known would come. Cylindra was dying. Her mortality had progressed faster than expected, perhaps because her body was not accustomed to aging, perhaps because she had chosen to accelerate the process. She lay in a bed in the archive of memory, surrounded by those who loved her. Her silver skin now faded to gray. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand as he had held so many hands before. Catherine stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. Velathan knelt at the foot of the bed, his ancient eyes filled with grief he had finally learned to feel. I am not afraid, Cylindra whispered. I thought I would be, but I am not. You taught us all so much, Daniel said. You showed your people that endings are not failures. They are gifts. Cylindra smiled weakly. You showed me first. I only followed your example. She looked around the room at the hundreds of Valerie who had gathered to witness this moment. None of them had ever seen death before. None of them knew what to expect. But they were here, ready to learn the final lesson. Remember me, Cylindra said. Grieve for me, and then live. Live fully, love deeply, and when your time comes, let go without regret. Her eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. And then, peacefully, she was gone. The room erupted in grief. Valerie, who had never cried, wept openly. Those who had never lost anyone felt the crushing weight of loss for the first time. And in that pain, they found something they had sought for millions of years. They found meaning. The funeral was held at sunset, in the garden where Daniel had first taught Cylindra to grieve. Her body was returned to the elements, scattered across the plants she had loved. And as the last light faded, the Valerie sang a song they had composed in her honor. It was the first new song written on the endless expanse in 3 million years. 1 year later, Daniel stood on the same spot, watching another sunset. He was 69 now, and he could feel his own ending approaching. Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon. Sooner than he would have liked, but exactly when it was meant to be. Catherine joined him. She had aged, too, gray appearing in her hair, lines forming around her eyes. But she was still beautiful, still full of purpose, still helping others find their way. The colonists have settled well, she said. They are building families here, having children with the mortal Valerie, creating something new, something that will last, Daniel agreed. Not forever, but long enough to matter. Velathan approached, moving slowly. He had chosen to age rapidly, knowing his time was limited. He wanted to experience a full mortal life in the years he had left. I have been thinking about your words, the elder said, about how endings give beginnings their power. I think I finally understand. Tell me, Daniel said. A story without an ending is just noise. But a story that ends becomes part of something larger. It becomes a lesson, a memory, a gift to those who come after. When I die, I will not disappear. I will become part of the story my people are writing together. Daniel smiled. That is exactly right. The three of them stood together, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Behind them, the endless expanse hummed with life, with love, with meaning that had been missing for 3 million years. "Are you afraid?" Catherine asked Daniel. "Of your ending?" Daniel thought of Margaret, waiting for him somewhere beyond the veil. He thought of Salandra, who had gone before him. He thought of all the patients he had helped cross over, all the hands he had held, all the lives he had touched. "Every day," he said. "And that fear is the most precious thing I own, because it means I have something worth losing. It means my life has meaning." He took Catherine's hand in one of his and Velethan's in the other. "We are all mortal now," he said, "and that makes every moment we share a miracle." The stars blazed overhead, ancient and eternal, but somehow less beautiful than the brief flames of mortal life burning below. And the Allery finally understood what humans had known all along. It was not death that made life precious. It was the willingness to live fully, knowing that death would come. It was the courage to love, knowing that love would end. It was the gift of letting go, and in letting go, finding everything worth holding on to. That was humanity's gift to the stars. Not technology, not strength, not cunning, just the simple, powerful truth that endings are not the enemy. They are what make beginnings matter.